pulled up to the front. The midwife on call, Erica, was waiting for me right up front, and she walked out to my car. She opened the car door. The minute she opened the car door, I started contracting again. So I was doubled over. She's like, "Do you need a wheelchair?" I'm like, "Yes." So she gets me a wheelchair. They push me upstairs. Again, we get off the elevator. Instead of taking a left, labor and delivery, we go straight to the birthing center. The birthing center is just 2 rooms. They're low intervention rooms. They have queen size beds, like they're real beds, not hospital beds. It has a bathtub. It has a birthing swing, basically everything you need for like a unmedicated labor. And so she rushes me in there. She had the bath already ready to go, and she basically threw me on the bed. She said, "We're gonna check you." She checks me. She says, "You're 6 centimeters, 100% effaced. You're not leaving here without a baby." And of course, that's when it really, really, really gets real. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm gonna have a baby today." So I went and immediately hopped in the bathtub because my back was just killing me. I had such bad back labor and back contractions. It was so unfortunate. So I was in the bathtub trying to have the hot water, making my back feel better. And at that point, the contractions were super manageable. During the contraction, it obviously really hurt, but once it ended, I felt completely normal, completely fine. My husband walks in. He has all of our bags, and I'm like, "We're gonna have a baby." And again, that was around 8:03. So I stayed in the bathtub for about 30 minutes, and my midwife said, "Okay, I want you to get out. I want you to go walk around the hospital for 30 minutes. Don't stop walking. Just walk around to try to get the baby out." And she said, "Then you can come back and get back in the bathtub for 30 minutes, and then we'll get out and try something else." So I got out of the bathtub. I put on some clothes. Me and my husband walked around the hospital. I went downstairs. I got a bagel and hot chocolate, and I was like, "I know I'm going to need some nourishment, so let's get as much as we can in." With the unmedicated labor, you're allowed to eat the entire time. You're not restricted on, just ice chips or popsicles or whatever it is. You can eat food. But I knew that once I got to a certain point, I wasn't going to want to eat or be able to eat food. So I was trying to get as much as I could in. I knew I needed my energy. We were walking around. Right at the end of our walk, my birthing photographer arrived. I sent her to the room, and then right before we walked upstairs, my doula arrived, and she went back upstairs with us. I jumped back in the bathtub, and everything kind of continued that way for about an hour, the same way, bathtub, everything like that. Eventually, they made me get out, and they made me start doing other positions. One position was they put me up against a wall, made me pull my belly up and push my pelvis forward. Something about that and helping her move down. I don't really know how it worked, but I kept basically getting in and out of the bathtub, trying different positions. They had me sit on a toilet facing backwards and with my husband behind me. I did not enjoy that one. I had to do that for, I think they said 10 contractions. And then I got back in the water. I tried hanging. They didn't want the actual swing, but they wanted like these ropes hanging from the ceiling. They wanted me to like put my hands in the ropes and like hold on to it and like use like when the contraction hit, like pull my body down, like let gravity pull. I did one contraction of that and said I refuse to do that again. That hurt so bad. But we basically were just doing all these different positions. Probably about an hour and a half to like 2 hours into that whole process, I transitioned. I don't really know the full definition of transition, but I know, at least for me, it was this state where I just went completely, it's almost like blank. I was almost like I was in a different, it's like an out-of-body experience. Like I was there, but I wasn't there. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. We had worship music playing the entire time. So I was in the bathtub. I was on my knees. I kind of had my legs spread like, I was like kind of like a tripod, I guess. And I was like leaning on the bathtub like that, laying down. And I had my head laying on the bathtub. My husband was there, like rubbing me. My doula was rubbing me. And I just was like, I remember I was just laying there and I was almost like asleep in between contractions. I was singing worship music. but like just like singing it very, very, very lightly. But I felt like I was like in a dream-like state. And then the contraction would hit. And the second the contraction would hit, I just started praying. I prayed every single contraction the entire time out loud, just like, Lord, get me through this, get me through this, get me through this. The entire time I was contracting, and then I'd go back into my like dream-like state. And that went on for a while. At that point is when I wasn't able to eat anymore. My husband had been trying to feed me some bagel, and I don't even know if I knew he was there anymore trying to give me bagel. I couldn't do it. I couldn't chew. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. They kept asking me, like, do you want water? Is the water hot? Is the water cold? And my answers to everything was, I don't know. And they had kind of warned us about that in the birthing classes. They told the husbands, you need to be really prepared and know what your wife wants, because there's going to be a point where she's not going to be able to answer. She's not going to be able to advocate for herself. You've got to be her advocate. So if they're trying to do something to her that she doesn't want done, you got to speak up, because she's not going to be able to do it. And I was at that point. I couldn't tell them I was thirsty. I couldn't tell them I was cold. I was just laying there, like, asking me questions. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Where's the pain? I don't know. Are you cold? I don't know. Are you thirsty? I don't know. And it was just so strange. It's like my brain was not working at all. It was truly a primal experience, to say the least. So maybe about after an hour of that, I moved over to the bed because the bathtub, one, kind of broke. I don't know why, but they had refilled it, and the drain wouldn't close all the way, so the water was just constantly pouring out, and they were having to keep the water on, and after a while it would obviously start getting cold. And so the water was getting cold. They had the head off, trying to like run up and down my back because my back was hurting so bad. So they like had the water on my back, and then the size of the bathtub wasn't huge, and so because I was on my knees, like I said, my knees were just getting tired, and I wasn't comfortable. I couldn't get comfortable. Laying down was not comfortable. And so finally I was just like, I'm going to get out of the bathtub. I got out. I moved over to the bed. They put me in different positions. They had me on my hands and knees, but my arms like on a ball, rocking back and forth. They had me sit on a birthing stool. They had me lay there with a peanut in between my legs on my side. Just doing different things. They were saying something about my cervix being thinner on one side than the other, or like tilted. I'm not sure. Something about one side versus the other side. Again, I wasn't really there mentally, but I remember they kept saying, well, it's still there on one side. Things kind of continued that way for several hours. Probably around noon, my midwife said, okay, let me check you again. She checked me and she said, okay, you haven't progressed as far along as I would have liked to have seen. She's like, you're only to 8 centimeters dilated. And she said, your water still isn't broken. She said, it feels very, very thick. The membrane is super thick. There's a lot of water. So it's like a pad, basically, like this really, really thick pad in between your cervix and the baby's head, which is probably preventing you from progressing faster. So she's like, it's totally up to you. Which again is why I love my midwives. They were not forceful or anything. She said it's completely up to you, but I would recommend breaking the bag just to move things along. At that point, I was already 8 centimeters. Her head was very far down, so I was pretty confident that we weren't going to be facing a prolapse cord situation, or a situation where I'd have to go in for a C-section because my water had been broken for over 24 hours. So I said, okay, yeah, go ahead and break the water. I'd heard bad things about the water being broken, about it being very, very painful. It was against my birth plan from the beginning to ever have my water broken, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and it just goes to show that not like you can have a birth plan, but you most likely aren't going to stick to it or not be able to stick to it. So she got the hook out. It's like this long plastic thing with like a little hook on the end, and she inserts that, and she had to dig around. I saw her down there. She was like digging super hard trying to pop the bag, and it was not breaking. It took probably like 2 minutes of her just digging. And I felt just liquid, and it felt like a huge relief. I was just like, oh, like, I don't know why. It's crazy. It just is such a relief. And she said that was so thick. She said that's how thick the membrane was. Like, I was struggling to break it. She's like, there's no telling how long your baby's head would have taken to break that. So, good call. And I was like, yeah, okay, we made the right decision there. So, after that, things progressed quickly in terms of getting, further dilated. And the pain definitely progressed. Soon after the water broke, the pain intensified so much that I was screaming during contractions, and I started asking my husband and the doctors to knock me out. I asked them to hit me on the head with something. At one point I said, just knock me out. My body knows what to do. My body can do it. I don't need to be awake for it. And they were like, no, you can do this. You can do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to be awake for this anymore. Just knock me out. Like, I don't care how you do it. Seriously, like, hit me in the head with something hard. I don't care. I was begging for someone to knock me out. But, it was kind of going through moments of panic like that, and then collecting myself and being like, okay, I can do this. And so, maybe about an hour of that very, very intense contractions, I got back in the tub at one point and tried to start pushing. I said, I think I'm feeling the urge to push again. They said, go ahead if you want. I tried, and it hurt. And I was like, it hurts. And they were like, okay, stop. If it's hurting.
Is it okay to push? Yeah. I don't know.
If it hurts, then stop.
Yeah.
Might not quite be time.
Don't do it. So I said, okay. So I didn't push. Got back on the bed at one point, and again I said, I'm feeling the urge to push. She said, I'm going to check you. She's like, you're 9 centimeters, but you know what? Go ahead. If you want to start pushing, go ahead. Because it's actually a myth that you have to be 10 centimeters to push. You can push earlier than that if your body is feeling like it. So it was really just kind of going off of my body and like my intuition and my feelings. So I started pushing, and at that point it felt right. It didn't hurt anymore. It felt like it was the time to push. So I started pushing, and I pushed 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 for, in total I pushed over 2 hours before she finally came out. But I know about an hour in, I was getting super, super discouraged because I was pushing with all my might, pushed every contraction. I know the nurses finally came in at one point. For a while, it was just my midwife, my doula, and my husband, and my photographer, obviously. But there were no nurses. They would just come in if the midwife needed to get something from them. They weren't like hanging out in there. But the good thing about the midwife, like I said, it's different from the doctor, is my midwife was with me from beginning to end. She didn't leave. If she did leave, it was just to go like get a drink of water or like enter notes in the computer. She wasn't going out to tend to other people. She was specifically assigned to me. She was with me the entire time. And it's different from when you're in a hospital giving birth. The nurses are with you all the time. And I'm sure the nurses are great, like the labor and delivery nurses. They are fantastic. But they do pretty much all the work. The doctor comes in at the very, very, very last minute and sometimes even misses the birth because they're only there to do the final delivery. They're not there throughout the whole process. And so I really, really, really liked my provider being there the whole time with me. But anyway, so she was there the whole time. And the nurses hadn't really come in. But at that point, probably about 45 minutes into pushing, one nurse came in. I forgot what her name was because, again, I was not there. But she introduced herself and she started assisting with getting me in positions, all that stuff. And every single time I would push, they were like, good job, you're making progress. And at about an hour, I got mad, basically. And I was like, I don't want to hear one other person tell me that I'm making progress. If I were making progress, there would be a head. But there is no head. So until there's a head, I don't want anybody to tell me making progress. Like, this is not working. And so they didn't say it anymore. I was really discouraged, and I remember the nurse had said, I was like, why is it taking so long? Why is there no head yet? Is something wrong? And the nurse said, well, you've been pushing for just over an hour, and most first-time moms push between an hour to 3 hours, which somehow, after all of our very detailed, very long labor and delivery classes, that information was left out. So I didn't know. I was thinking, like, all the other stories I have heard, people have pushed like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, not even an hour. And so that's why I was thinking, like, something is wrong with me. So if you are pushing for hours, know that it is apparently normal. It's definitely not fun, but it's normal. And if you push for 15 minutes, consider yourself very, very lucky. So when she said that, I just got even more discouraged. I'm like, I can't do this for another 2 hours. Like, what do you mean people push an hour to 3 hours? What happened? Like, is that dangerous for the baby? At what point are they going to send me in for a C-section? Because one, I didn't want a C-section. I didn't want that for the baby. I didn't want that for my body. And I didn't want that for my mental state, because I basically cannot have an epidural. I have a huge fear of needles and a huge fear of people even touching my spine, let alone inserting a needle into it. A needle that is like this long, by the way. So it wasn't going to happen for me. That's one major reason I decided not to do a hospital birth or to have an epidural, is because I don't think I can get it. Mentally, I don't think I can. So I was not about that. I also told them I did not want an IV. When you're in a hospital, although technically they do not have to give you an IV, they get kind of nervous if you don't have an IV port in your arm for emergencies. So they really, really, really want to just stick a port in your arm the second you're admitted into a hospital, which I said I am not giving birth with an IV in my arm. I refuse. Like, I will not do it. They even said at one point, they're like, if you test positive for group B strep, we're going to have to use an IV to administer the medicines. My midwife did say, if you want to do it intermittent, basically insert it, administer the medicine, take it out, and then every 4 hours you have to re-administer it until you give birth. I said if I had test positive for that, then I will do that. Luckily, I tested negative, and I can try to do another video on the steps I took prior to giving birth to make sure I tested negative. I don't know if they actually work or if it was just coincidence. Apparently it's kind of a 50-50 shot whether or not you test positive for that. So anyway, but luckily I tested negative, so I didn't have to have an IV at all, which is another reason I love the birthing center. So I had no needles in me, and I didn't want to have to go get needles put in me to have a C-section. So I even told my midwife, I said, if I have to have a C-section, I need you to knock me completely out. I don't need a spinal tap. I don't need an epidural. I need to be completely unconscious, because the thought of someone cutting my body open and me being awake, there's no way I'd be able to lay still on that table. So I said, just knock me out. And so I didn't want to be unconscious during the birth of my child. There were just a lot of things I didn't want. At the same time, at that point, I was thinking, me being unconscious is going to be the best thing, because I am dying of pain. But again, it was kind of moments of, like, not wanting a C-section, but again, wanting to be knocked out. And I was just like going through that, and then going back to, I can do this. So I pushed. I started pushing probably around 1 o'clock. Probably around 1 o'clock. I know at 1:15 my mom had said that she heard me scream and she assumed I was pushing, and she thought maybe it'd be there soon, but wasn't. So it was probably 1 to 1:15 that I started pushing. And like I said, about an hour in, she had said, oh, well, it could be another 2 hours. And that just got really discouraging. Well, they kept putting me in different positions. Finally, the midwife walked out of the room. I assumed to get a drink of water or enter some notes in the computer. And I asked my doula, I said, where'd she go? She's like, oh, she just stepped out for a minute. She said, hey, while she's out, why don't you hang onto the headboard, like get on your knees, hold onto the headboard, and just do that for about 5 contractions and let gravity do some work for you. And I knew that being in a position where gravity, like a birthing stool or on your knees, hanging like that, I knew those were the most effective ways to give birth, but it was super uncomfortable for me. The only position that would give me relief, or not just relief, it would make me feel the best, was me laying on my side, on my right side. That was the position that felt the best for me in that moment. I don't know if it was just, it might be different next time. Maybe that's just my thing. I don't know. I've definitely heard that a lot of people do prefer being upright. I know the gravity definitely helps. But it felt very, very painful and very, very uncomfortable to me. My back labor was so bad, I could not feel the contractions in the front because the pain in my back was so bad. And it got so bad that in my back, the contraction would come, it would last for about a minute, and then it would go away. And it would, eventually they got super close together, but, they were about 2-3 minutes apart. So they would go away for 2 minutes and then come back for a minute. But because my back pain was the way it was, the back pain never went away. So I would have a contraction and the pain would keep going and never stop. So it was basically just this nonstop, terrible pain. During the contraction, it would get slightly worse, but it really never went away. And so when I was pushing this whole time, near the end of the pushing, they would tell me push on a contraction. At the peak of the contraction, I said, I can't tell you when I'm contracting because I am in constant pain. So the nurse had to stick her hand on my belly and tell me when I was contracting to tell me when to push, because I had no idea. It was just nonstop pain for probably at least an hour of just relentless pain. So anyway, she told me, my midwife left the room. She said, just get up here, hold on to this for about 5 contractions, just, again, see what it does. So I get up there, I pushed for about 3 contractions, midwife's still out of the room, and all of a sudden, I felt her crown. It was like the Hallelujah chorus, because although it was the ring of fire, it does not feel good. It hurts really, really bad. Honestly, I was terrified of the ring of fire. People made it sound like it was the worst thing in the world. But again, with all the pain I've been suffering the past few hours, especially the constant back pain, the back pain was just so overwhelming that the ring of fire really didn't hurt nearly as bad as I was expecting. So don't necessarily be super afraid of that. It definitely hurts, but it's not the worst part of the labor, at least not for me. So I felt her crown and I said, something's different, because I didn't want to say she was crowning and be wrong and get my hopes up. So I just said something's different. And they couldn't see because I was facing the bed and I was on my knees and they couldn't see my vagina really at all. And so the doula said, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to go get the midwife. She runs out. She says, hey, she's saying something's different. I'm wondering if my midwife had stepped out to try to figure out what to do or to consult a doctor, because at this point it had been over 2 hours since I started pushing. And I'm sure she was trying to figure out okay, what do we do now? She has to think too, at what point do we say we got to call this quits and we got to put you in for a C-section? So I don't know if that's what she was doing or not, or if she was truly just taking a little break, but she comes running back in. She's like, okay, what, they said something's different. What's going on? I was like, it hurts. I feel something. And again, my brain's not working. So I can't even describe what I'm feeling. She's like, okay, well, flip over and let me look. Let me see what's going on. So I flipped over, and the second I flip over, she's like, okay, Austin, get ready, because Austin was going to catch the baby. He had his shirt off already. He was planning on catching the baby and putting her on my chest. So she's like, Austin, okay, get ready. And she's telling the nurses, get me this, get me this, get me this. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this is it. And that's when everything changed mentally. I was ready to go. I was like, it's game time. Like at that point, it's like the bottom of the ninth, the bases are loaded. We got it. Like we're doing this. It's adrenaline's going. So I'm like, I'm ready at that point to just push nonstop. Like I'm like, I'm going to crank this out. I'm just going to push. So I just start pushing. Her head's getting further and further out. The midwife says, hold on, I need you to stop pushing. She's like, I need you to stop pushing just for a minute, like just wait it out, wait till the next contraction. And I'm at, it's tearing, like it's ripping her head's there, it's stretching, it's tearing. And I'm like, no, it hurts like hell, it hurts. And she's like, you gotta let it stretch, you gotta let it stretch so you don't rip, like you gotta let it stretch. And I'm like, I'm trying. So she's finally like, I need you to wait till the peak of the contraction. And I'm like, okay. She's like, that's when I want you to do it. So I started feeling it. She's like, okay, push. So I pushed, and she's like, look down. I'm like, I'm looking down and all I see is a belly. And I'm like, I can't see. She's like, look down. I'm like, I can't see. I'm like trying to tell her, like, no, I like literally can't see past my stomach. And so she's like, okay, just push. So I pushed and pushed more. And finally she says, my midwife my doula was filming the doula was filming the birth. So, because Austin was about to catch the baby, and the midwife says, can you turn that off? And like says, come here, and like pulls me. She's like, I need you to scoot closer. And I'm like, oh my God, like something's wrong. Like if they tell you to turn off a camera, it's because they're afraid of liability. And I knew that. As an attorney, I knew that. As, just as a general human being, I knew that. And I was like panicked. I was like, what is going on where they need this camera off? Luckily, my doula did not turn the camera off, but she actually moved around because the midwife kind of got in between the camera and my vagina. So my doula moved around kind of behind Austin so she could still see. And I think I know what happened because she kind of told us, not exactly what happened with that afterwards, but she told us a problem that arose. But of course I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing, we're just getting the baby out. And you could tell she's kind of like, nothing, like didn't want to tell me. And on the video, she like has her hands, like her whole hand inside of me. And she's like saying push, and she's doing this. And if you look at it, you're like, what is she doing? Well, it turns out, she told us this after the fact, after my daughter had come out. She's like, she came out like this. She had her arm like this, wrapped around her neck, not her cord, but her arm. So her elbow was adding a bunch of distance that had to cover and come out, which makes it difficult to come out. And she even said, she's like, that was what was probably making it so hard for her to come out, is because she was blocking herself from coming out. And she said that she had to reach in there and knock her hand down. She said she had to take her elbow and do like this, knock her hand down. And when she did that, she said she came straight out. So I'm pretty sure on the video that's what she was doing. She was doing this, and she knocked her hand down. She said push, and she said she's coming. And sure enough, right after she did that, baby's head, one more push, baby's shoulders. She's like, Austin, get ready. And my husband's got his hands there, and he pulled her out and put her on my stomach. And to me, she looked blue, but apparently they're usually like bluish color when they come out. He put her on my chest. She was wiggling. She was kind of making these noises. She had her eyes open. They were rubbing her off. And she, on the video, it takes her probably about 20 seconds to start crying. But no one ever looked concerned or anything. Her heart rate stayed good throughout the entire labor. They were doing intermittent monitoring, which is not you don't have the belt on you, monitoring your contractions or your baby's heartbeat. Monitoring your contractions is useless because, again, it's fully based on how you feel, not on what the monitor's saying. And then they were just using the Doppler to monitor my contractions randomly to make sure she was okay. So when she came out, they were holding the cord. She's like, oh, her heartbeat's really, really good. She made my husband feel it. He didn't want to, but she's like, feel it. And he's like, oh yeah, that's nice. Like, he didn't want to touch the cord, like, ew. But when he put her on my chest, you can see this in the video, my face, I was in total shock. Like not like, but like the definition of shock. Like when like pain, is so bad that you just go into shock and you can't feel anything. I was not there. My face was like my eyes were huge. I didn't know what was happening. People were talking to me. I had no idea what they were saying. And I'm just like looking at this creature. I'm in disbelief that this baby was inside of my body. I'm in disbelief that I just made it through that and that I did it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, I'm a mom. I'm gonna be a mom forever. And it was the craziest experience. She started crying. I on the video you could tell that I started kind of crying, but I don't remember that. I don't remember feeling any type of emotions. I just remember being just stunned and just shocked. I kept asking questions over and over, like, is she okay? Is she okay? Is she okay color-wise? Like, she was kind of down low, and so I was wanting to pull her up closer so I could, like, hold her closer to make her feel better. And they were like, hold on. She's still attached to you. The cord's still attached. It's not a very long cord, so she can't, get closer. And we were doing delayed cord clamping, so we weren't going to clamp the cord and cut it until it stopped pulsing. I thought that was like about 30 to 45 seconds, but hers did not stop pulsing for a few minutes, maybe like probably longer than that, probably like 6 or 7 minutes. So apparently that's a thing. So basically she was just sitting there attached to me. Her umbilical cord was still attached to the placenta that was still inside me for probably 6 to 7 minutes before they actually clamped it and my husband cut it. But so I'm just holding her there. They wrapped her up in a blanket. My husband and I are laying there. There was a point where I really wanted a baby that had blonde hair. And so she had a head full of dark brown hair. At one point, the doula on the video was like, she's got a ton of hair. Like, whenever the head was coming out, she's like, it's got a ton of hair. And I got so depressed because I was like, oh no, that means it's brown. Because like babies who are blondes don't really have hair at birth. So I got depressed by that when I was pushing. And when she came out, I was like, she has brown hair. And I did that on the video, and like everybody was laughing. They're like, it may fall out and turn a different color. And I'm like telling her, I'm like, you made me mad. And my husband was like, it's not like black. And he's like, she doesn't look like me because he has blonde hair. And just anyway, but it was the most surreal experience. I would definitely do it unmedicated again. I now live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I am looking to see if there's any low intervention rooms in a hospital, because again, I'm comfortable being attached to a hospital as opposed to being a freestanding birthing center, just because if there's any emergencies, you're right there. So I'm kind of looking for like a low intervention room or a provider who's willing to not bother me and shove an IV in my arm and all those things. So I'm gonna look into that definitely. But anyway, yeah, so that's my birthing story. I'm going to try to do a couple other videos on like the induction methods that I used and kind of the things that I like, why I chose unmedicated and why I chose all the things that I did, because to me it's important, because it was important to me. It seemed like it was healthiest for the baby and the mother, and then do something kind of about my symptoms during pregnancy, because I had a really rough pregnancy. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments, or just, want to talk about your birth experience or an anticipated birth experience. So I would definitely do what I did over again. Everything was worth it to have her. Definitely wish it would have gone a little bit faster, because being in labor unmedicated for almost 24 hours. I think 23 hours was how long I was in labor. I gave birth at 3:27 p.m., went labor at 4:20 the day before, and I pushed for over 2 hours. So definitely would want that to go differently next time. But other than that, everything was great. And yeah, I will do a video on the postpartum part of that, because there were some complications I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to giving birth naturally. So I just had some issues. So anyway, yeah, just let me know if you have any questions.